welcome to this show today, Lukas. I'm very happy to have you here. Very excited to talk with you about today's topic. So how are you doing today?
I'm very happy to be here.
Let's start with some basics for people who don't know who you are. You are the CTO of WAX. And what's your background? What took you here? And well, let's just start with your background.
Sure, that's a good question. I've been in software engineering for the last, I want to say, almost 25 years, and I've done a whole bunch of different projects over the years, starting from being a developer back in the e-commerce boom in the 90s, and I've worked for various different companies, large and small. I worked for startups, I worked for very large companies, and about 10 years ago, I realized that I'm very interested in organizational development and growing teams, right? So I transitioned away from just directly writing code, and my role became more of building teams, focus on architecture and scaling. So I worked for various different companies where I run teams of about 100 people. So I was at Beachbody before. Those are the guys that in US do a whole bunch of different workouts videos and that type of stuff, and e-commerce. And then after that, I actually became a CTO at Grindr, which was the largest, which is the largest gay dating network. I was working for them for probably 4 years until the acquisition by the Chinese company. At which point after that, I started kind of looking at the space and trying to figure out what I wanted to do next, right? And I was very interested in blockchain because I do think that technology has a massive potential and application in various different areas. That's how I started talking to William and others at Opskins at the time. Initially I was hired to actually scale up the Opskins team and make sure that we focus on that marketplace. At the same time, as I was coming in at the beginning of 2018, one of my tasks was to select the right technology for the blockchain. WAX released the white paper probably a month before I started. And we had to select the technology, assemble the team, and we finally ended up launching the WAX blockchain back in June of 2019. And the rest is history.
Yeah, and that's pretty much when I came into the picture. Well, I was looking at everything. I was a little bit into WAX, but back when the launch came here, and then I've lived and breathed WAX since then. Pretty much, it's what I do every day.
That's awesome. That's great.
Yeah. So that's what brought you here, and you mentioned that you got a little interest about the blockchain space. Is there anything that you fiddle with on your own time, or has it mainly been with the working aspect?
Yeah, so I have fiddled a little bit on Ethereum before. I was very interested in the concept of smart contracts and the potential of that, right? Where you're creating these publicly available assets that lock in some sort of business logic. I think if you look at this Cambrian explosion of DeFi innovation that's happening on Ethereum, that's definitely a testament to validity of that approach. We are definitely doing the same thing on WAX, my hope is that with the latest changes that we're making with bridging with Ethereum, we're going to be able to bring some of that innovation even in the not only the NFT space but also in the DeFi space back to WAX as well. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and okay, so all my regular viewers, they are well aware of what WAX is, what WAX does, what an NFT space is. But
Sure.
and today we will go into the WAX DeFi model, the new tokenomics. But before that, what is the main purpose of WAX, and how does NFTs play into that?
Sure. So WAX as a platform is designed to focus on the NFT space. You know, if you go back to the first white paper and then iterations of that, you know, the underpinning notion is that we want to create a platform that allows you to own a specific non-fungible token, some sort of a digital asset. You know, a variation of that could be a digital asset that is actually tethered to a physical asset. You know, that's a concept that we pioneered, I think, last year, and we call it the viral, right? The virtual in real world item. So I think, you know, I don't want to go too much of a tangent, but definitely that area is still very much going to be explored further. But when it comes to WAX blockchain, you know, we definitely want to create an ecosystem that allows you know, true ownership of your asset, and then provide tools that allow you to, you know, buy, sell, trade. You know, our hope is that there's going to be more and more decentralized applications built on top of that platform to essentially facilitate all these different applications, right? So if you actually look at WAX blockchain since it launched, you know, you kind of see a very interesting evolution of various different technologies. So you know, now we have not only one by two NFT standards. So we started with simple assets, then atomic assets where it was introduced. So that creates a very interesting competitive dynamic in the space, and I think competition is good, right? We want the best for the users. The same I think is happening in the marketplace space, right? So there were several different marketplaces. Then, you know, Atomic Marketplace and Atomic Hub launched, and you know, they definitely innovated more in the space, which now forces the whole community to also raise their game. I would hope that over time there's more and more of that happening. I think that the key to success for us is definitely get WAX and WAX platform out of the realm of crypto people, right? I think that the key for widespread adoption is building tools that reduce friction when it comes to blockchain and cryptocurrency and crypto in general, because you know, interaction with ledger and the whole management of your private keys, when you try to explain some of these concepts to you know, what we call non-coiners, it's a non-starter, right? Like you cannot have someone like, you know, let's take my dad, for example. If you know, he's 70 years old. If I were to say, okay, Dad, you need to now get the ledger, install scatter, and you know, you need to do all these things in order to interact and do something, that's just not going to work. So I think that was the main genesis behind the introduction by us of the WAX Cloud Wallet last year, because we essentially recognized that in order to scale this model, we need to ensure that we build the tools that allow people who are used to very seamless mobile experience to be able to, you know, come on the platform, log in with Facebook, log in with Twitter, you log in with Google, or simply log in with, you know, standard login, you know, email and password. And then they need to be able to interact with decentralized applications with as little friction as possible. So that was the kind of the underpinning why we even went down the road of having this centralized wallet where we manage all the keys and everything else. And you know, that was done so we can actually reduce friction, right? So it's one of the building blocks that I feel is necessary in our space to have the wide adoption. we haven't seen this yet, right? Even though we have been very successful over the last, 5-6 months with various different experiments when it comes to, selling NFTs. We brought in some very interesting IP to the table. But when you kind of look at the user growth, we're still kind of operating within the same group of people, right? I mean, we've been able to acquire some organic users that are not in crypto, which is great. But in order for this platform to succeed and for any blockchain to succeed, I believe we need to focus on user experience and how frictionless it is. And that's actually, that goes not only for WAX Wallet and WAX blockchain in general, but also all the other dApps that are being built.
Yeah.
It's really less about technology. And it's more about making sure that you provide a very good user experience to non-coiners, and you actually start thinking about user acquisition and retention strategies, right? That's very important.
Yeah, and that's what I think WAX did a great thing with. WAX didn't come and start to build their own blockchain protocol. They take a protocol that another big team is working on, something that is working, something that is easy to adapt and to build upon, which is EOS.io by Block One. And I mean, taking that and focusing on the user perspective is very important, because all the tools we have are built by tech people for tech people. There are nothing built for users. The first marketplace that was actually easy to use that I have seen for the NFT space, it's Atomic Hub. And this is why it's so great. And the first NFT standard that was easy to use because they brought tools is the Atomic Asset Standard. And because of that, they took over the entire WAX ecosystem in little to no time.
That's right.
So user experience is key. And from my perspective, the WAX wallet is the best wallet I've used. But it's still a long way to go for a new person to come and use it. Everything needs to work from the start. It needs to be a beautiful experience. And perhaps with the new wallet, we will get into that later, it's really close to that. But there are still steps. As soon as you go out from the wallet, you still need to interact with all the other aspects to use it, and that's where a lot of friction is to acquire some wax or to do something else. It's a lot of things that we still need to work on.
For sure.
And I agree with you. We need to work on user experience. That is the number one thing to reach more people.
That's right.
So okay, WAX DeFi. First off, what is a DeFi protocol for WAX and the NFT space? What are we doing here?
For sure. So for people who do not know what DeFi is, it's really a acronym for decentralized finance, right? And
essentially, cryptocurrency from the bottom up is DeFi.
That's right. And in fact, this term started being introduced where additional logic, so to speak, was essentially being encapsulated in smart contracts. In addition to just normal, cryptocurrency trading, right? So we had the main coins like Bitcoin or Ethereum, which were associated with the actual blockchain itself. Then with on Ethereum, we started seeing all these different altcoins being introduced, and then the next step was essentially, now we have all these altcoins, and now we can actually code a whole bunch of different logic and then close in the smart contracts in a decentralized way, which then spurred this innovation in liquidity pools and vaults and a whole bunch of different stuff that's going on in that space. Bottom line is that, at WAX, we realized that, we have a very good purpose built tool for NFTs. But at the same time, we wanted to make sure that we provide as much value to the WAX users and the WAX ecosystem by tapping or bridging into the finance DeFi space on Ethereum, because I think what we are seeing now is a specialization, right? So for a very long time, and even up to today, you know, there's a lot of blockchain maximalists that are talking about like, oh, each blockchain has to do everything, right? I mean, that's a nice idea, but realistically, I don't think that's how it's gonna develop over time. I mean, you see that in other businesses and other verticals where, you know, companies tend to specialize, right? So, you know, the same way WAX is specializing in NFT space, Ethereum became de facto king of finance, right? That's where the liquidity is. That's where the most investment is. That's where the all the innovation and DeFi space happening. So you know, the whole genesis behind us even looking at doing our own DeFi was to recognize that we wanted to you know, bring that value for the WAX blockchain. And the example sometimes that I use is, you know, let's imagine you have a company. You know, I'm Polish, so I'm going to talk about Polish market a little bit. But let's say you have a company in Poland and you're making some widgets, right? And your company is listed on Polish stock exchange, right? You are going to be able to tap into liquidity and essentially that particular market, right? So you're kind of constrained by the Polish market. Now, if you're able to then list your company on, let's say, NASDAQ in America, right? That changes the game for you because now you have much broader exposure to other investors. You have a much broader reach, and just by listing your company potentially on the larger exchange, your valuation, the value is increased, right? So it's very similar concept. So what we said was that, okay, so WAX is specializing in NFT space. Our WAXP token is a utility token. So it is enabling all the activities that are required to do, you know, buying, selling, essentially operating NFT business. But you know, the valuation of that token is really a snapshot in time valuation of what the blockchain itself is doing. So we essentially said, hey, we need a way to be able to express the not only utility but the economic value of the WAX blockchain in a form another financial instrument, and list that financial instrument on Ethereum, because that is a much larger pool of investor liquidity is there. And then we also wanted to also think about not only the utility value, but also future value. So valuation of the future economic activity value of the WAX blockchain, right? So when you think about stock market, right? Stock market prices in the future of the company, the future of a platform, right? So and we believe that by introducing this DeFi that tethers to the WAX blockchain in a meaningful way, we can actually benefit much more from that. I don't know. I hope I answer your question.
Yeah, for sure. And then you really went into why DeFi is a benefit for the WAX ecosystem and why you chose Ethereum. And as you say, one place probably isn't for everything. I mean, you can do you can do everything on top of WAX, but at some point that will be a bottleneck. So I agree that it's better to tap into some ecosystem that actually works. We have some DeFi on EOS. It's kind of working, but there's no liquidity, as you say, so that wouldn't be the place to go. And this will enable a lot of things. So overall, I think it's a good thing. And if we take the WAX DeFi model, you say that it gets some kind of value from the activities on the WAX ecosystem. So let's start there. If I am a WAXP holder, I have tokens on the WAX protocol blockchain, and I want to participate in this DeFi space. How does that work, and what steps do I need to take?
For sure. So there are really there are a couple of steps, and I don't know if I can actually share my screen because it's probably easy. The article that we released has a couple of good diagrams that I think are good basis for this discussion.
Yeah.
So maybe I can share my screen very quickly here.
Yeah. Yes, you can.
And yeah, so let me share that. Right. So if you look at that, it's a good diagram that kind of answers your question, right? So if you're a WAXP token holder, then the flow is you will be able to essentially convert that WAXP, and that conversion is actually triggering a burn on WAX blockchain. So you will be essentially burning the WAXP that you own, and you will be receiving a WAXE on Ethereum, which is a ERC20 token. The exchange ratio is essentially 1,000 to 1. So for 1,000 WAXP, you're gonna get one WAXE, right? So that is the first step. What that does is now you have this first element of the DeFi in your position on WAX blockchain. I'm sorry, on Ethereum. The next step is really to participate in the liquidity pool. And the reason why even liquidity pool needs to exist is essentially a very important mechanism to every DeFi project that ensures that the tokens that are being introduced into a system can be freely traded, right? So if you actually look at some of the latest changes that we've made to our DeFi model, we introduced liquidity pool, and we realized by talking to a lot of different DeFi projects on Ethereum that, you know, if you look at some of the projects that failed or had problems, you know, they didn't have a really good mechanism providing liquidity into their ecosystem, right? So that is why in a WAX DeFi model, the rewards are actually now introduced to the liquidity providers, right? So if I have my WAXE, I need to then take Ethereum ETH and deposit that into this liquidity pool, which then makes me a liquidity provider. Now those tokens get locked, and then in exchange for me providing these tokens into liquidity pool, I get back something called liquidity pool token, which we call this WAXE-ETH token, right? So that's one reward that you're gonna be getting by participating in this liquidity pool. The second reward are going to be obviously all the exchange fees. So liquidity providers essentially get a percentage of the exchange fees. And then the last reward is the WAXG token, which is another piece to our DeFi. And WAXG token is essentially a governance token that will be emitted to the liquidity pool, liquidity providers through liquidity pool mining rewards, right? So in a step 2, by providing liquidity, you get essentially you know, these 3 different rewards. Really what's the most important thing is this WAXE-ETH token, because then you can take those and stake in this WAX economic activity pool, which then makes you entitled to periodic distribution of all the fees that are being collected on WAX blockchain, right? The WAXG, which is the governance token, is being introduced for in order to have a mechanism where WAXG token holders can actually vote on various different parameters of the DeFi, right? So there are a couple of different things that a couple of different settings that you can tweak, right? So for example, when we collect fees on WAX blockchain, a percentage of that fees before it gets sent to Ethereum for distribution gets burned, right? So WAXG token holders will be able to vote on how much of the fees are actually being burned, right? Then there's also, once you start distributing, there are really 2 pools. There's a piggyback pool and distribution pool. And at the beginning, you know, we will be distributing 50-50. So each of those pools is going to be getting equal share of the fees collected on WAX blockchain. But those parameters in the future will also, WAXG token holders will be able to vote on those. And there are going to be other parameters as well as we go through this. Now, I talked about a little bit about the WAXE-ETH token and the distribution, this periodic distribution that you will be entitled to. The WAXG token has another purpose also. So the piggy bank pool that I mentioned, that will be perpetually accumulating fees, so it's going to be growing forever. The additional interesting mechanic for the WAXG is that you can actually decide to burn your WAXG, and if you burn it, you will be getting a corresponding percentage of share of that piggy bank pool, right? So
and this is one of the major updates that you made, how much of this portion that goes to this pool.
Yeah, so if I had a crystal ball in front of me, I would say that probably there are different, I guess, investment strategies in DeFi, and people feel differently about various different components of DeFi systems. Some people may value periodic distributions versus, let's say, an ability to vote and affect change within the DeFi. Personally, I think that WAXG will over time be probably the most valuable piece of this ecosystem, because number one, you will be able to affect the DeFi calculations and allocations. So number one. Number two, which is probably the most important factor, the fact that WAXG is a claim check to this perpetually growing pool of fees, over time, I think that token will become very valuable. One thing that's important is, this system has been designed with the longevity in mind, right? So this is not something that we want to introduce to have some sort of a money grab or whatever. This is a very well thought system that we're putting together, so that as we are focusing on growing the NFT business and potentially other aspects of WAX platform, there is a longevity to the value that DeFi brings to our WAX blockchain. So let's say our goal is to increase the number of major IPs that are actually doing business on our platform, and over time, let's say 2 years down the road, if we're able to increase the level of economic activity, be, let's say, 100x or 1000x, that becomes very meaningful to this new DeFi system, right?
Yeah, and that's something that I actually asked the WAX team before, and this DeFi model, what kind of usage is that actually based on? Because a lot of those we see launched are based on what happens today, and this seems to be based on something that might happen later on.
Yeah, for sure. So this is definitely something that from a perspective of the roadmap, right? There are kind of 3 phases that we're working through when it comes to actual DeFi implementation. So the first phase that we're in right now is introduction of the WAXP to WAXE Ethereum Bridge. Backend for that is done. We're doing some reviews now. The team is actually working on the implementation of the UI, so you will be able to do that easily in the WaxCloud wallet. We're also working now on setting up the liquidity pool and making sure that the liquidity pool mining rewards algorithm is put in place, and this WAXG emission actually happens. So that's the first phase. We want to definitely make sure that that is live by the end of the year. So what that will bring to the ecosystem is that you will be able to obviously convert your WAX P to WAX E, and then you will be able to become the liquidity provider if you want to, right? That will also mean that WAX-G and WAX-E are going to be now released and traded on possibly many dexes on Ethereum. So it's gonna be interesting to see what's gonna happen there. The next phase after that is we're gonna be focusing on making sure that the actual distributions are collected well and actually converted to WAX-ETH and then allocated into these piggy bank pool and distribution pool, along with starting the regular distributions to the WAXE-ETH token holders who stake their tokens in that pool. And then the last phase is going to be governance. So we want to make sure that at some point that after that is done, we allow WAX-G token holders to start voting and making proposals to changes to the DeFi model. So that's kind of how I see it. I want to get all these things done by sometime in the middle of Q1 of next year. The first phase, like I mentioned, I want to make sure it goes out by the end of this year.
Yeah, that's great, and I like that it's not exact timelines, but we get an idea, and that's beautiful. If we take a step back, so WAXP is on the WAX blockchain. You can swap 1,000 of them for one WAX-E. Is that ratio locked forever for a time frame, or is that how it works?
It is locked forever for now. It's one of those parameters that I do not think it's going to change over time. I want to leave it up to the WAX-G token holders, right? I think the very interesting dynamic to this is going to be once the proposals can actually be made and the WAX-G token holders start voting on how they want the DeFi to evolve. Maybe there will be a proposal at some point to change these ratios, right? I think that's part of the interesting aspect of the system, that nothing necessarily is going to be locked in place, right? The governance aspect is going to put the participants in the driver's seat, right? To see what happens.
So then we have the WAX-E, and if you stake it to the liquidity pool, you have to stake equal amount of value. Is that value based in dollars, to my understanding, or how is that value based?
Yeah, so I believe so. So you will have to stake equal amount of US value in terms of WAX-E and ETH to the liquidity pool.
Yeah, and then you get some new token, which is this updated, is WAXE-ETH. And this third token is how you get rewards from the sales of NFTs on the WAX blockchain.
Correct. Yeah.
This token, is that as liquid as all other tokens? So potentially that could also be up in some kind of
for sure. Pool? So exactly right. So the funny part, once you actually look holistically at the whole ecosystem, there is really at least three financial instruments on Ethereum that are being introduced. So the WAX-E, WAX-ETH, and WAX-G tokens that they're all connected, right? And they're working together. But the interesting part of that is that they all could be listed and traded on dexes as well. So aside from the liquidity pool dynamic and distributions and everything else, it's going to be, I think something important to say here is that, as part of that, we've also looked at various different evolution of the blockchain space in general. So, when William talks about this particular model, he calls it like a fourth generation tokenomics, where the valuation of the WAXP token and then valuation of the WAX-E and other tokens on Ethereum is actually, programmatically linked to the economic activity and what's happening on the blockchain. In the past, there hasn't been really good idea what makes one token to go up in value or down in value, or what's the actual valuation of the platform, right?
Yeah.
I sometimes I talk about, like, is it the number of transactions? Is it the number of users? Is it the, DAUs, MAUs? What is it, right? And I think if you look at the space, nobody really knows, right? A lot of the valuation is based on hype. We want to definitely change that. So, there's a clear programmatic tie between these distributions and how much economic activity and what kind of fees are being collected. So you can actually have a financial model and forecasts, right? And I think that is going to also be pretty interesting in the blockchain space in general. So
yeah, it's for sure interesting, and it would be very nice to know where we are in 1 year from now. We don't. But okay, so we now know how you get the WAXE. We know that you need to stake it together with Ethereum in the liquidity pool. You get rewarded with WAXE-ETH. In what ratio do you get this WAXE-ETH, and what ratio do you get the WAXP? Is that something that is set in stone? How does that work?
Oh, you mean what rate do you get?
The two tokens, the WAXE-ETH and the WAXG tokens from the liquidity pool.
So we're still working through that, right? So the liquidity pool is going to be, the liquidity pool token is going to follow standard algorithm from Uniswap. So that's the first one we're going to be implementing. And then the emission of the WAXG, there's going to be an algorithm that we're actually working through right now. So I can't talk about specific details.
You said that you were testing it and seeing how it works and everything. So that's perfect. Yeah. And it shouldn't probably be announced until you have actually seen that it works properly. But this WAXE token, as you say, it has this portion of the pool, and we know how many tokens there are of WAXG, we know how many there are of WAXE. How is that done on WAXE-ETH? Is that something that is just printed until the liquidity pool is gone, or how does that work?
Oh, you mean how many tokens are how many WAXE-ETH tokens are given out?
Yeah, exactly. In total,
I see.
The supply.
It really depends on the liquidity pool, because there are different types. So we're going to be following the Uniswap, and Uniswap essentially mints those as the supply is being provided. So as more supply is being provided into the pool, the more tokens are being minted, and they become kind of like a claim check for the liquidity that you provided. So if you want to get it back and get your exchange fees, then you can burn those WAXE-ETH tokens and withdraw your WAXE and ETH plus the exchange fees if you want to. Yeah.
Okay, so you burn them. So you get this WAXE-ETH token. Let's say I have played a little bit with Uniswap, but a lot of the WAX people have not. They have stayed out of that. So you stake your WAXE-ETH tokens and you stake your Ethereum into this pool. You provide liquidity. That is an option that you can do if you want to. And then you get this WAXE-ETH token. And you said now that when you have this, you can burn it to get back tokens. How does that work?
So essentially, so that's a functionality of Uniswap again, right? So if you want to, you can, after, let's say you participate in a DeFi for, let's say, I don't know, 3-6 months, and you don't want to do that anymore. You just go back to Uniswap, and there's a functionality there that allows you to burn that token that you have, and then that emits that action essentially emits the initial staked tokens back to your Ethereum address, right? So you get that back. Go ahead.
And then you said that the WAXE-ETH, the new token, that is also a liquid token. If I acquire more of that, can I burn that for another person's stake from the liquidity pool, or how does that work?
Can you burn that for another person's stake? I don't think I understand the question.
You said that my tokens are locked in the
Yeah.
Uniswap pool, and I
Yes.
get this token in exchange for that. And if I burn that, I get my stake from the pool back.
Yes.
So if I acquire more of this token that has some kind of stake in this Uniswap.
Oh yes, that's right. Yeah, that's a great question. Right. So WAXE-ETH is a claim check, right? So the fact that you own it, it essentially gives you access to the liquidity pool. And since this is traded, you could potentially buy more of the WAXE-ETH on exchange, let's say, and then potentially then use that to then burn, and then you know, whoever sold their token,
yeah,
you're essentially now holding a claim to the liquidity that they provided, right? So let's say if you and I decide to provide WAXE and ETH liquidity to the liquidity pool, and then I decide, you know what, you know, I'm just gonna sell my WAXE-ETH on DEX, some sort of a DEX, and then you end up buying it, then now you have essentially claim check to 100% of all the tokens in the liquidity pool.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So that is very good to understand, to clear that out. When I put my WAXE and Ethereum into the pool, do I get this WAXE-ETH token, the new one, directly, or is that something that I get over time?
You do that. You get that directly at the moment of your deposit, and you know that is important because you know it's really tied to the action that you perform at the time, and you know, we want to make sure that you have access to those tokens, because then that you would have to, in order to be eligible for the distribution from the distribution pool, you will have to take the WAXE-ETH tokens and actually stake them in the WAX Economic Activity Pool smart contract. And then that will make you eligible for these periodic distributions as an additional reward.
And for me as a WAX user, can I do this in the WAX cloud wallet, or do I need to have another wallet like MetaMask or something?
Right. So the phase one of this implementation will allow you to convert the WAXP to WAXE easily within the cloud wallet. We potentially implement some tools that will make the other aspects easier. So you know, Uniswap itself has pretty good tools. So I don't think replicating that makes any sense, but we may do that. I know that for the you know, act of actually staking into the WAX Economic Activity Pool and all that stuff, we'll build some tools in the WAX Cloud Wallet so you can actually do that more easily, right? I think over time we want WAX Cloud Wallet to become a centralized place where you can do WAX and WAX DeFi things as easy as possible. You know, following the same mantra of you know, user experience is probably the most important thing, right?
Yeah.
We definitely want to remove friction. You know, unfortunately, you know, as we're going through this process, we are realizing that you know, we will have to integrate with various different means of authentication and authorization. You know, the latest refactoring that we have done on WAX Cloud Wallet that went live, I think it was a couple of weeks ago. Yeah. You know, is the big change there, aside from reskinning the UI, is that the user identity mechanism, right, was actually extracted out as a standalone component, which means that the WAX Cloud Wallet now can, over time, support, you know, logging in with Scatter, Anchor, or this all access that we have in our ecosystem, all access, the wax.io, that's the identity mechanism that kind of allows you to actually, you know, log in, authenticate, and prove who you are. And then as we expand these, we also realize that we will have to also allow people to log in with MetaMask, right? And that's going to be even more important to support because of the bridge component. So, many people may not realize that a lot of these building blocks that we have in flight right now are definitely contributing directly to the DeFi roadmap, but they're also very important from more long-term strategic roadmap of the WAX platform in general. So the fact that we are doing this Ethereum bridge, initially it's a one-way bridge from WAXP to WAXE, but I can tell you that there is a development lane on my team that is going to be dedicated just to the bridge for a while, because we want to not only support this particular use case, but I want to start supporting, bi-directional bridge, allowing movement of altcoins from Ethereum to WAX and from WAX to Ethereum. So, one of the first ones that are going to be starting with is USDT. So we want to make sure that we support Tether. I think that's going to be very important altcoin for the marketplaces, because right now everything is listed in WAX, which is a good thing, but there is certain volatility to WAX price. So
yeah.
If I want to list my NFT and and so the way that mechanism would work is that you would have to own USDT on Ethereum and then use our bridge to essentially transfer that to WAX, at which point your USDT on Ethereum would be locked in escrow, and then you would be issued the one-to-one WAX version of USDT. So we internally call that WAX USDT, right? So
just to clarify something there, now you say that you have to swap that, and that is perhaps true in the start, but then WAX blockchain is a decentralized blockchain. There are open source contracts to launch a DEX, a decentralized exchange. Anyone can do that if they have their legal requirements and everything. Anyone can launch an exchange and list this, so you can actually start to swap it on WAX with no transactions fee and very fast.
Thank you for calling that out, because when we talk about, I get a lot of questions sometimes about like, well, where are we going to be in 2 years or even further down the road? We are in a very interesting point in time, because we are building, these components that could then be used for many different things, right? So definitely our focus is on the NFT business, and there's whole development lane on our side for that. In fact, most of the business development team is working on making sure that we establish relationships with large companies, and then we are able to license their IP to grow that ecosystem. However, I would say that once we have the Ethereum Bridge in place and you're able to actually move altcoins back and forth, then that is a very critical mechanism that allows people to develop their own DEXs, right? So, and we know that Ethereum gas fees can be very high. There could be a potential development where there's going to be a lot of exchanges, DEXs being built on WAX, right?
Yeah.
Also, once we actually have access to these different altcoins and different financial instruments, who knows, maybe people start porting DeFi smart contracts and liquidity pools and DEXs it could be a very interesting development for us over time.
And for anyone interested in doing that, there are open source ones on EOS right now.
Yes.
The code base is the same. You can bring it. You just need to do some changes to make it work. So that is possible. And if we take this, you're talking about this bridge back from Ethereum, and we have WAXP. And when you transfer WAXP through the swap to Ethereum, you burn 1,000 of them. So the supply of WAX is reduced by 1,000 if you transfer 1,000. So
right.
a swap back has been speculated in the community that you can swap back to those tokens, but that is not possible since they are burned. So how would that work? And that would have to be, from my perspective, some kind of DEX liquidity pool or central exchange is the only way I can see that you can come back, or some, yeah. So what's the
It
plan?
would have to be essentially one of those mechanisms. That is why, you know, I don't want to completely close the door on that. But honestly, there is so much mental space that I have in my head and others have to kind of put all these different pieces together. Introducing yet another piece to the equation, and you know, I cannot answer that question right now, right? There is a reason why it's unidirectional right now. You know, it makes all the different, I mean, the system already is pretty complex. For now, I want to say that we're going to go live with only unidirectional bridge. Whether that's going to change in the future, potentially. If it does, then we will have to have a mechanism like some sort of a DEX or liquidity pool to be able to essentially, exchange WAXE back for WAXP, because WAXP was already burned, right? So, now you mentioned that it's you know, reducing supply. I think that we also wanted to benefit the WAX blockchain through DeFi by introducing deflationary mechanisms, right? So that is why there's actually two deflationary mechanisms introduced by this DeFi. One is, you know, every time a WAXP holder swaps their WAX for WAX-E, that's one burn. And then, like I mentioned before, the another burn is every time we distribute fees collected on WAX to Ethereum, you know, there's a percentage of that that's going to be burned, and we're going to go live with 20% burn.
So what happens with the other 80%? Because if that is being swapped to WAX-E, then it has to be burned. So how is that going to add value?
There are two swap mechanisms. There's a public swap mechanism for WAXP token holders, and then there's a version of the swap mechanism that essentially takes that WAXP and is going to be distributed as the fees, right? And that WAXP for now is going to be just locked.
Okay, so there will be some pool that is building up in WAXP.
That's right. So there's going to be a perpetual pool that's building up. That could be the answer maybe in the future if we decide to say, hey, I'm going to allow WAX-E to be exchanged back to WAXP. Maybe that's a pool that we will draw from. But the idea is that, you know, the economic activity fees that we will collect, the portion that gets distributed, you know, that WAXP is essentially locked in kind of like this perpetual escrow, and then the WAX-E is emitted on the other side. Yeah.
Okay, so 100% of community tokens swapped is being burned, 20% of the fees collected from NFT sales on WAX.
You got it.
So that's good. And one more question on the DeFi model: how is the fees enforced?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Today, it's really a gentleman's agreement, right? We have a very good dynamic developing with marketplaces. People are innovating, and so far, you know, we have been able to have very good conversations with marketplace owners, and you know, we all understand that you know, collection of the fees is part of life, and because of the DeFi, it actually benefits everybody, right? So today it is really you know, there's no programmatic mechanism that would prevent a marketplace from saying, hey, you know, I don't want to collect the fees and go rogue, right? But I am a realist, and as the ecosystem develops, that may change, right? So we internally have been discussing various different, I guess, options to enforce those, ranging from less intrusive to really, really intrusive. And they range from having a clearinghouse smart contract where marketplaces subscribe to, and that gives them an easy way to collect collect and distribute the fees. And another option is to essentially work with the NFT standards and make the collection fee part of the standard. So you can kind of see that Atomic Assets today and Atomic Marketplace has kind of a very good built-in mechanism to collect the fees. But let's be real, it's an open source standard, so someone could just copy it, create their own flavor, and now rip that part of the code out, and that's it, right? And then on the I guess the most intrusive side of these options is essentially introducing the fee collection as part of the block validation, transaction validation mechanism, right? So that would require essentially changing the core of the blockchain code, and then have block producers actually enforcing that only transactions and actions that comply with certain standard that would have to be developed for fee collection are actually committed to the blocks, right? So my personal approach to this is that we want to start with the clearinghouse. Once we get there, towards the end of the year, we'll definitely start having a deeper conversation with Atomic Marketplace and other marketplaces to kind of figure out the best way to do that. And then once we implement that, we'll see, right? If we see that there's a lot of rogue marketplaces that are essentially that do not care about providing value to the WAX community, and they just want to do money grab, then we will probably have to make a decision as a community what to do with that, right? My hope is that maybe community itself is going to enforce that, right? Because at the end of the day, a marketplace as good as their volume, right? So if we see a marketplace that doesn't give a shit about WAX blockchain community and they don't want to collect the fees, then I would hope that the nobody would go there to trade their assets. But who knows what happens, right?
Yeah,
so we'll have to wait and see, I think.
From my perspective, you have another option, since you have decentralized power with the wallet. Since you have the wallet that most people use, the one that is most user-friendly, the more you work on that, the more users want to use that. I mean, I have a ledger, I use Cleo's command line interface, I use Scatter and Anchor wallet. I don't like them at all, those two options, but I do. But for most things I do, I use the cloud wallet because it's convenient. Yeah. And for that reason, since you signed the transactions, you could enforce this in the wallet layer. Absolutely. And it would apply for most users, and it would be probably the least intrusive option out there.
Introduction of essentially a blacklist where you can list accounts that are prevented from emitting transactions, right? Yeah, that's definitely an option. I can tell you just, from my Opskins days, and also days at Grindr and other companies, anytime you start to enforce certain rules, right? There's always a way to go around it, right? So, people can essentially automate and have bots that create new accounts. So now it becomes a cat and mouse game, right? If I have a staff that needs to dedicate their 100% of their time to making sure that the blacklist or whitelist up to date. I don't think that's, I mean, that could be a intermediary solution, right? But ultimately, if we find ourselves in a place where there are people who really do not give a shit about WAX community, and they try to go around what's best for all of us, then yeah, we'll have to you know, take a look at how we can actually start enforcing that and the block producer level.
Yeah. This discussion could be very interesting to go deeper in, but let's not go into it will soon reach some kind of politics and governance and everything like that. So we talked about the cloud wallet. We have seen that the upgrade is a great addition, and you have put up more updates since it's launched. There's a lot of things coming and happening and being improved there as well. The sales so far that the WAX team has been on has had different kinds of small to bigger issues that has been resolved.
For sure.
What kind of process are you working on your side to smooth this out, or are you doing something?
Oh, for sure. That's a good question. So I think one thing that we realized over the last 6 months is that you know, WAX Cloud Wallet is as a solution was built for you know, back in the day for Opskins business as an identity management, right? Then essentially was adopted for WAX blockchain. We introduced social logins, and then the whole component that can sign transactions. So over time, you know, that piece of software developed, right? It had a completely different purpose at some point, and it just kind of evolved, right? During that evolution, you know, there was some tech debt that was accumulated that needed to be solved. So I think that main issue that we found was the fact that the NFT sales tend to be extremely bursty, right? So it's not a gradual increase in traffic that typical cloud computing platforms can accommodate by, you know, having auto scaling groups and having configuration that essentially, you know, has heuristics watching, you know, certain traffic parameters. If it sees that, oh, I hit the threshold, I'm going to start spinning up more capacity and add capacity, right? Those solutions, you know, are very good, but, you know, adding new nodes, adding capacity takes time. Typically, you know, even if you automate it, you know, it takes anywhere from, you know, 2 to 5 minutes to add a new node to a cluster, right? Before it gets spun up, all the health checks pass, and it actually gets introduced and serving traffic in the load balancer. So the reality is that for bursty traffic, we need to pre-scale it, right? So now what we do, we actually work with the community to understand when certain major launches are going to be happening. And, you know, a couple of hours beforehand, me and my team, we actually spend time scaling up the capacity, because what we've seen is we see anywhere from, you know, 10 to sometimes 30x of requests. So, you know, you were talking about, you know, 3,000% increase in requests within a span of, we're talking about, you know, 5 seconds, right? So that is a pretty interesting engineering problem to solve. I can tell you that, you know, platforms like Ticketmaster and others spent years to putting in specific architecture to be able to do that automatically. You know, unfortunately, we're doing it manually now, so I need to know when major launches are happening. So that's why Telegram is really important. And if you guys think that you're going to have some very important IP launches and there's gonna be 20x increase, then you have to let me know, because if you don't, then you will see Cloud Wallet most likely be unresponsive for, you know, 5 to 30 seconds, maybe even 2 minutes sometimes. because infrastructure will need time to catch up, right? I think long term, depending how this utilization pattern evolves, right? Long term, I want to change architecture to accommodate bursty traffic, but those architectural solutions are definitely not easy to implement. They're a little bit more complex than just standard auto scaling. So now you will have to implement something called eventual consistency model, where your calls for updates, they don't update right away. You essentially put these requests in a queue. So there's an intermediary queue that kind of acts as a buffer, elastic buffer for these requests. And then there's essentially on the other end of that queue, you have processors that can scale up and down. But that also means that your client model, how you build applications, needs to change, right? Because the fact that you updated something doesn't necessarily mean that if you reread it right away, you're gonna get that new state. Yeah, and then also there's some other techniques like optimistic versus pessimistic locking on the database side, and I don't want to really get into that. These type of things you need to start looking into once you get into the realm of thousands and thousands of transactions per second coming in. I hope that we get to that point and we get to play around with these very advanced engineering concepts. But again, to be able to implement that so it's all seamless and we have 99999% uptime, for that you need much larger DevOps NOC team, and also you need to spend significant amount of money on cloud infrastructure and all these different architectural solutions. WAX Wallet today has a very standard architecture. So we're running on Amazon cloud. There's a standard CDN in front of it, and we've got load balancer and microservices architecture in the back end. That is just kind of handling the traffic. There are just there is some of the auto scaling that's happening, but like I said, the nature of the bursty traffic is very different from just like auto scaling based on some gradual increase, right? So I think that's problem number one.
I'm not sure if you can actually go into this, but what kind of like computer power do you need to run such service for people?
Yeah, so typically, so the WAX Cloud Wallet typically, well, there are several different microservices that compose the cloud wallet, right? So you've got your login service that is handling all the incoming logins, establishing of sessions, tracking sessions, and all that stuff. Then there's also the identity management microservice that handles, storing things like who you are and, what your credentials are, what you can do. Are you logging with email, or are you logging with Facebook and all that type of stuff. Then you have a microservice that handles the wallet itself, right? And if you actually were to look at the latest changes, we've spent a lot of time re-architecting the all access and the wallet to move as much of the information off centralized databases to the chain itself. So, now, for example, when you select your, if you want to see certain tokens, right, and you go through the token configuration, that used to be saved in the database. Now it's being actually saved in the smart contract. So, and then there's so over time, we're going to essentially be shifting as much of the information that we can store on chain will be stored on chain. But there are some things that cannot be, right? So the big service that I haven't mentioned is something that we call internally a wax on service. Wax on, wax off. Wax on service is the a microservice that is kind of facade to anything that deals with blockchain interaction, right? So all the other services are able to actually interact with the blockchain via WAX On. And WAX On works very closely with something we call signing service. So signing service is a microservice that is dedicated specifically to securely signing transactions for the users. What that means is that we are running a pretty significant security infrastructure, using something called HSM. HSM is the Amazon hardware security modules. There are several of these things running. So let's take a tally, right? So we've talked about five services. Each of these services needs to run at least on 2 nodes for redundancy, right? Yeah. Ideally 3 nodes if you were to follow standard DevOps process, right? Let's say we run it on something like T3 medium when the wallet is not scaled up, right? So now you have at least 10 nodes, T3 medium nodes. Then you have to have your database for the IDM and login. Then you have Redis for all the sessions. Then you have HSM. So once you start adding it all together, right, this is not an insignificant cost, because then you have networking, load balancers, monitoring, so all the infrastructure that is responsible for collecting metrics and all that stuff. So I kind of I wanted to explain the complexity, right? Yeah. This is not a server that's sitting in a closet in my room, right? That's
why.
Right. There's been significant investment made into All Access and Cloud Wallet over the years, that infrastructure is actually, like I mentioned, hosted in the cloud. When I actually go through a process of scaling the infrastructure up for some big event, it takes me probably 2 hours to go through all the scaling scripts, making sure that as I do that, I don't, break the service, so things don't stop working. So, I need to look at the Redis cluster, I need to look at the database cluster, I need to look at the HSM cluster, then I need to make sure that we switch from maybe T3 medium nodes to something much larger, like C5 2x large. And then I need to, for each service, I need to then replace all the already existing running nodes with the new ones, right? And that I need to do without breaking shit. We are automating this process. So at the end of the day, I want to just, be able to click a button and say scale up, and it just kind of automatically happens.
Yeah.
That is not trivial to do if you want to maintain the level of service and don't break things at the same time, right?
Yeah, and I can understand that for sure. I mean, we run our infrastructure in Sweden. We have a few different locations, and we run public history APIs for at least 8 blockchains right now. Nice. So we have a few thousand transactions per second at sometimes, and sometimes it is a bit lower. It goes up and down. And that infrastructure is not very fun to maintain at times. At other times, it's very nice.
Yes.
But we run our servers ourselves. We have bought all the hardware. We put them together. We run them all bare metal. So we have for us, the scaling situation is differently. We need personnel to take care of the machines because they need maintenance and things like that. But the scaling is rather easy because our machines are way more powerful than they have to be currently.
Yeah, so that's the thing, right? If you're running bare metal, the scaling strategy really is you need to be extremely over provisioned, right? So you need to run hardware that you know is much more powerful. So you need to have enough hardware to accommodate the highest peak, right?
Yeah.
So then the name of the game is really you need to correctly forecast what that peak is.
Yeah.
And if you make a mistake in that, then you're pretty much screwed, because adding bare metal server is very difficult. It takes time. So that's why I'm not a big fan of running bare metal infrastructure. I mean, there are definitely cost advantages, security advantages to that. Having said that, you know, I have been bit in the butt many times by bare metal. So every time I end up working at a company that has some significant traffic, or they need to you know, scale, I typically move them either to Amazon Cloud or Google Cloud, because it's a little bit easier to kind of manage things, right?
Yeah.
And then also you don't have to have as big of a staff to kind of take care of everything, right? Because you're no longer doing networking yourself and configuring the boxes yourselves, and I mean, if you're using any sort of abstraction layer through hypervisor or whatever, you don't have to do that. It's all handled for you, right? Then you're focusing more on the I guess DevOps architecture rather than you know, Linux administration and networking.
Yeah, there are for sure pros and cons, and it's fun. And our point of view is running the block producers and the APIs and things like that. Is that it's very good that we have this, since a lot of other people use Hetzner or Google or Amazon or things like that. So we have more redundancy when we have different kind of solutions for running nodes for this kind of infrastructure. So from our perspective, it totally makes sense.
Yeah, we talked about Cloud Wallet. One aspect to scaling and some of the problems that you've seen is also connected with payment processing. So
yeah,
when we first launched TOPS, the architecture that was implemented at the time was flawed. So we had to iterate several times on that to be able to make sure that number one, we have the enough capacity to process transactions and integrate well with Stripe, but also do it in a way so the user experience is as best as possible, and then the way the transactions are processed is fair, right? Because there's this concept of the moment you enter a certain point in a checkout process, we need to reserve your inventory, right? So now you're kind of linear in the queue, and the reservation process can sometimes be complex, because what happens if you don't finish your process? What happens if you don't have funds? What happens if your card gets declined? Now we need to make sure that we monitor reservations and the inventory gets released back to the pool. So anytime someone tells you that Stripe integration is walk in the park and you can do it in half a day, that's definitely not true. and
not when it's a race for number one means.
Yeah, that's right. So, but I think that with the latest launch for Atari, I'm super happy about Atari for a couple of reasons. Number one, Atari was built as a decentralized platform. So, our goal now is to scale the NFT business, which means that, I want to make sure that, I don't want engineering to be involved at all in any of these launches, right? So I want our business development to be able to do it themselves, or hire people who are not necessarily that technical to be able to, once the deal is inked and contract is signed and we get all the assets and we figure out the case opening odds and dynamics, and then we have also the understanding of any sort of crafting dynamics that we're going to have in the future. they need to go to this, what we call internally, this NFT launch platform. And there's no coding, right? They just configure. So they configure the look and feel of the site, they configure the collections, they configure all the templates and schemas or whatever, and then they configure the pack openings and prices and all that stuff, and this is all gonna be happening in the kind of like a wizard-like fashion on the back end. There's gonna be internal back end that people will be able to do that. And with Atari, a lot of that infrastructure, a lot of that groundwork has been put in place. So I would say probably 90% of Atari has been done through smart contracts and this abstraction level. So then that platform can be reused over and over and over, which means that each launch, if it does have issues, then fixes to those bugs are incrementally additive to any additional launch, right?
And that is very important to understand, because there was issues with that Atari launch because there was a lot of new moving aspects, and these things will help in the future when everything is more standardized your way.
This was a completely new platform. So, and I know, like from outside looking in, it doesn't seem like that, but the reality was that all the different experiments that we were running starting in May, June, July, August with different launches, each of these launches was pretty much a new DApp, a new smart contract, a new infrastructure that was being built on and experimented to kind of figure out the best way to do it, right? Also at the time we had multiple standards going on, and Atomic Hub wasn't out yet. So now we're finally in a place where there's a lot of building blocks that we can reuse. The WAX Cloud wallet was completely refactored, and Atari platform was actually, so Atari is actually a platform, right? So it's no longer just one dApp for Atari. It's a platform that we're going to be using and reusing going forward. And the same went for payments. So the actual payment processing with Stripe and how we do the reservations and how that whole flow works was actually refactored and redone as well. So a lot of work went into Atari for the purpose of being able to then incrementally build on top of it. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. And I mean, from a user perspective, it is frustrating to see some issues with the first launch and the second and the third and the fourth, and then seeing from that perspective, it's the same thing happening over and over again. Yeah. And it's good that you can explain why that happens. It's still not fun for those people that put in money and experience these kind of issues, because it has evolved to that the first guys that buy something and open it gets the most valuable assets in the NFT ecosystem.
Sure. That's a very good point. And I hope that over time the valuation of assets is going to move away from just a mint number, right?
Yeah.
And I understand completely why mint number is a expression of value, right? Because today that's the only thing we have, right? If you look back to the CSGO days and Opskins days, right? What happened there, the valuation of all these different digital assets was based on historical trades, right? So there was enough history, there was enough understanding from the community what these assets were, because it was a long time. They were around for a long time, right? So over time, a specific wear or a specific type of a CSGO item had, like, let's say it was worth $5. Well, why was it worth $5? It was worth $5 because the market said so, right?
Yeah.
That the historical trade said that this is kind of the price. So the funny thing is, when I think about it, the CSGO items and other items back in Opskins days, they became kind of like stable coins, right?
Yeah.
Because you knew that whenever you had that skin, you can sell it for a specific amount of money, right? Now, let's be honest. I mean, we are at the very, very beginning of NFT NFT innovation, right?
Yeah.
So there isn't enough trading history for these items yet to establish that sort of baseline of how much certain parameters are worth, right? And I think that over time, as the space innovates, there are going to be other aspects rather than just a mid number that's going to be important to people. But that will not be dictated by us. That will be dictated by the market, right?
Yeah.
It's going to be decided by the users what they want to collect and why they want to collect it. A big aspect of that is that you know, we're just very early at the beginning of innovation in the area of smart NFTs. Let's be perfectly clear here. NFTs are smart contracts, right? So I would imagine that over time, there's going to be massive innovation in terms of gamification of this space. I mean, we already see it. You know, there's going to be different layers to NFT series. So
Yeah.
you will be able to combine NFTs to create other NFTs, potentially trigger certain action in the system if there are actual games being built. So I'm actually very excited at this at that aspect of the space, right? And the more innovation happens, the more dynamic and the more, I guess, smartness gets built into NFTs. I believe that the valuation is going to be more complex, but I think it will also increase over time, and it will be better understood, right?
Yeah.
But that's not going to happen tomorrow. You know, what we see today, I see groups innovating in the space already when they are trying to gamify the experience. You know, that is actually a good thing. That's actually a competition because, and I'm getting out of focus. There we go. Come back. Yeah. So I think over time, what's going to happen is that you know, people and these major IPs will have to realize that, you know, if you just take a picture of your asset and you think that you're able to sell $100,000 worth of pictures without having some very interesting additional dynamic, you know, I think those days are slowly coming to be over, right? Also, if you compare the time in the NFT, I guess, innovation, you know, I sometimes also compare it to, and that's a good comparison that you know, the team makes, is, you know, if you look back when Apple Store launched, you know, everyone and their mother was making money, right? It doesn't matter if you were a big developer, small developers, you could launch a game, and because it was so new and because it was such a new thing, you know, everyone was able to make good money. And what happened over time? Over time, the consumers became more savvy, and things like user experience, the quality of the game started to matter, right?
Yeah.
And you know, you can no longer throw some mobile game together that you know is not high quality, throw it into Apple Store and expect rewards, right?
Yeah,
The
and this
bar
is something
very
that is great from the community, because the community currently are pushing you guys to push your, like, the pack opening, the experience of opening packs. Tribal Books just launched, and their pack opening was really exciting and amazing and really smooth, and that is something that is great, because the community is now pushing you to step up to the next level, because
Absolutely.
if you don't do that, the next launches from WAX will not be the same quality, because the community is growing rapidly, because
For sure.
each project is a small startup, and startups move rapidly.
Yep.
So that is something that is exciting for me.
Yeah, I think when we talk about pack opening and showcasing items, you know, that is increasingly more and more important. I think that you know, pack opening, dynamic is definitely one thing. I hope that over time, with introduction of new mechanisms that allow you to create your own packs, or something that we talk internally, and I know Atomic Assets is also working on that. The Pink Network guys, is an ability for you to create your own packs, right? So I hope that over time, if you should be able to create your own loot boxes, right, from your own inventory. And you could have assets that are already minted and assets that are not minted yet, right? And maybe there's going to be a mix of both. So we could see some interesting, pack openings or case openings, businesses coming. And I know that back in the day, there was this whole thing about watching on Twitch or some other streams, watching people opening packs or opening cases, right? This could actually come back to the WAX on the WAX platform with the NFTs. So we'll see what happens there as well. Right.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, when I do pack opening streams, they're usually the ones that has most viewers. People like it. I like it. It's exciting. It's fun. We have been on this now for a long time. So I just want one more question as something that we leave today with, and that is, where do you see the WAX ecosystem go over the next year? Like, so let's take New Year's next year. So that's like 13 months.
Right. So New Year's next year, there are a couple of things I would like to see. So definitely would like to see the volume of the NFT buying, selling, trading to be at least 100x from what it is today, maybe even more. I would like to see some major IPs from the non-coiner space to actually innovate and build games, gamifying the experience, right? I would like to see also introduction of mobile. So I think as the space innovates, the real answer to acquiring non-coiners is going to be mobile applications, and really applying some tried and true growth hacking and engagement hacking principles that Twitter, Facebook, all those guys do every day. So that's what I hope for in an NFT space. So very robust, mature NFT system, buying, selling, gamification. And then I would like our community to start being composed mainly by non-coiners, right? So I want the user experience in the WAX Cloud wallet to be 10 times better as well.
Yeah.
So that's one aspect. Another aspect, I think I would like to see introduction of DEXs and DeFi on WAX, not only for altcoins, but also DeFi that starts tapping into NFTs. NFTs are a store of value. So doing DeFi that is actually backed by NFTs is very interesting, because now you're essentially talking about collateralized lending, right? So potentially you could have DeFi models where people are lending money based on NFTs, right? And that's an interesting space that could develop over time. And then I think between the decentralized finance and NFT, that's probably that's where I see the most amount of growth. In terms of team, I hope that we continue to grow and scale. In terms of a community, I also hope that it continues, grows and scale. I would like WAX to become de facto platform that people go for, anything NFT based, right? The space is definitely heating up. We're not the only game in town. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this develops, right?
Yeah.
So.
Awesome, and I really hope that you are right with what you just said. And I'm very grateful that you took your time, got here. We had the opportunity to dig a little bit more into the tech aspects, the more technical things. And I hope that the explanation you have given on all the details of the DeFi model is enough for all the community members to understand. So
I hope so as well.
Thank you for taking.
Well, thank you for your time, my man. This has been great. Let's do it more often.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks you, mate.